So we're in the back of the grove right now, and I wanted to show you a few mango trees. This happens to be kit mango, and we have fruit. Some of it's about 3 inches large, and then we have flowers, and some of these flowers have already been pollinated and are developing very small fruit. Now, for kit, this is not crazy. Usually kit will have 2 or possibly 3 crops here at Truly Tropical, and that's just the way it is. It can flower early, but then it always seems to want to produce a late crop also. But then we have other varieties. This happens to be Angie, and we have similarly sized fruit and then also flowers. Over here's Fruit Punch. We have several clusters of fruit, and then we have flowers toward the top of the tree. It seems like this is the case with almost all of the varieties this year. A lot of years we'll have a very cold spell, and that will sort of trigger most all varieties to bloom about the same time. But this year we've had about 4 cold snaps, and the temperature on one of the cold snaps went as low as upper 30s. I think it was 38. But otherwise, the lows were more in the low 40s. So, a result of that is that we have multiple blooms on many varieties of mango. So, hopefully these trees will hold both crops and we'll have mangoes for a longer season than normal, but we'll see. So of course we're hoping for 2 crops to develop on these trees that have 2 different blooms. Some of the varieties actually have 3 different blooms, which is really crazy. But right now, what is happening at the Grove, or what has just happened, is an extended period of high winds. The winds were over 20 miles per hour for many days. This is the back of the Grove. It's protected. Most of the winds, the strong winds, were coming out of the east, which is the front of the Grove. And the wind is a problem for new flowers especially. The flowers themselves can dry out. The stigma, which is the part of the flower that receives the pollen, can dry out, can't be sticky anymore, so the pollen doesn't stick to the stigma. The other problem is the strong winds discourage pollinators. We were surprised at some of the pollinators that seemed to be very determined and made it to the flowers even with the strong winds. But I am concerned especially with the tops of the trees in the front of the Grove, because of course the further you get from the ground, the stronger the winds. So this particular area of the Grove is great for these trees. This year, the winds have been much stronger in the front of the Grove, and this part of the Grove has a lot of sort of buddy protection. These trees help shield each other from the wind, and the wind is generally not as strong back here as it is in the front of the Grove. So we're looking at flowers on most of these trees right now, and I think there's a good chance that we're going to get fruit from these flowers. The flowers that I'm concerned about more are the ones in the front of the Grove that don't have little buddy trees to help break the wind, and the tops of those trees really start to sway in the wind. Not only will that dry out the stigmas in those flowers, and so that the pollen won't stick to the stigmas, but also the pollinators will have a hard time getting up that high in that strong wind. But we'll have to just see. We're hoping, of course, that each tree produces lots of fruit. It looks like we're going to have a different schedule of fruit. The fruit on most of these trees looks like it's going to be 2 months apart. The first crop, it looks like it's about 2 months older. maybe even a little bit more than the flowers that are just developing into fruit. So 2020 looks like an unusual year for these mango trees. I think it's really good news that we have 2 different crops on a lot of trees. It looks like we'll have fruit and then possibly a 2-month break, and then that same variety will fruit again. But time will tell. We'll try and keep you updated.